Hi guys, my name's Lorraine Copes and I'm the founder of BAME in Hospitality. I want to start by welcoming you to the first of a two-part series, Black in Hospitality, in celebration of Black History Month. Over the two events, we're going to be joined by some amazing leaders, role models, and entrepreneurs within the hospitality sector and food and drink world. They're going to share with you insights into their career journeys, mindsets adopted to move forward, and also how heritage may or may not have played its part in their career choices. This event is in sponsorship with some amazing Black-owned brands, upcoming and established, Black-owned brands, The Life of Tree, Woodford and Warner, Schwen Schwen by Maria Bradford, Jerk It Up Sauce by Danes Catering, Echo Brewery, and Sham Sham Hot Sauce. So the panel will last for about 45 minutes. And then for the final 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to open it up to yourselves to ask the panel any questions that you may have. And in the meantime, feel free to talk amongst yourselves within the chat box on the right-hand side. And without further ado, I'm going to hand over to our panelists to introduce themselves. Maureen, can we start with you?
Hello, yes, thanks a lot, Lorraine, for inviting me onto this session. I think it's probably one of the first times I've ever spoken about my love of beer. So I'm Maureen Cole, I'm based in Birmingham. I am an accredited beer sommelier and I'm the beer columnist for BBC Good Food magazine.
Thank you.
I'm Reyes Phillips. I'm from London. I'm a writer and publisher. So my first book was Belly Full Caribbean Food in the UK, which was about the culture and history of Caribbean food and the people behind it in the UK. And more recently, Community Comfort, which is a charity driven cookbook that's raising money for Black, Asian, ethnic minority friends and families of COVID-19 victims. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you. And last but not least, we do have the Artisan Grower who are here, Robert and Michelle, but I believe they might be having technical difficulties. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you. And
can you hear us?
We can, but we can't see you.
We just have a blackout screen on our side, but maybe that's a good thing.
Do you want to introduce yourselves, guys?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, it's Robert and Michelle. We're a husband and wife team, and we currently own and run the Artisan Grower, which is a small farm based in rural Scotland that supplies veganic vegetables and soft fruits, microgreens, and edible flowers.
And we supply that to the hospitality industry as well as to retail customers.
Super. Thank you very much. And guys, you may have noticed we are one panelist down. Unfortunately, Loretto couldn't make it today. She's a bit unwell, so she's a bit sad about that, but it's one of those things. And so the first question I have for you is, could you just tell me a bit more about your pathway into the food and beverage industry? And Riaz, can I start with you?
Mm-hmm. I never really considered myself kind of directly in the food or hospitality industry, as I never had any kind of real stake in any entity in it apart from a couple of years working at a bar. So I think the projects I'm more known for, I just picked them as I always thought that food and to a lesser extent drink was always an interesting crossover way of talking about history and culture. Sometimes when you just straight up talk about history and culture, it's hard to get people engaged. But when you frame it in the guise of food and in the kind of general topic of food and everything that surrounds it, it's easier to get people more interested because everyone's interested in food and everyone's interested in, well, now a lot more people are interested in foods from around the world and the stories behind them. So that was kind of my route into it.
Okay, thank you. Maureen, your pathway?
Yeah, how did I get into beer? About 10 years ago, I started getting interested in beer, and it comes from the fact that, being a beer writer and a beer sommelier is kind of like a hobby, almost a not a sideline, but it's my kind of creative hobby, because my main profession for the last 17 years has been a journalist and a broadcaster. So I've mainly worked as like a reporter, producer, presenter for all the big news channels and organisations that you know of. And so I was, researching for a story idea, and I saw some data. This is like more than 10 years ago, that said that like double the number of women enjoyed drinking beer from one year to the next. And me back then, being like a red wine drinker, champagne drinker, was like, nah, this can't be true. So with my journalism head on, I went to kind of investigate it. And, when I learned about the kind of African heritage of beer, and its kind of journey through the times in England, I was also kind of visiting pubs and trying beer and exploring this story to make a TV feature. And I just fell in love with beer. So when I was learning everything I started writing about it. So, it's 10 years this year that I started my my blog.
Okay, super. And Robert and Michelle, we can see you now.
Yeah, has it not? I think it's frozen again, hasn't it?
Oh, has it? I mean, we can hear you, so okay. I'll just repeat the question for you. What was your pathway into the food industry?
Okay, ours was quite an interesting one, actually. It was almost synonymous with moving out to the countryside. When we moved to the countryside, we actually left office jobs, so to speak, behind. We were both working sort of in and out of London, or at least along the M4 corridor at the time. But we decided that we wanted to move the family to a more rural area, and Wales was the place that we thought of at the time. But then it ended up being Scotland, because it's a bit cheaper up here. And then it wasn't too long that we realized that actually the occupation that we had didn't really fit with where we were living. And so actually ours has more of a spiritual background, to be quite honest with you, because we were reading a book called Country Living by a lady called Ellen G. White. And in there it was talking about the different occupations that you could have in a rural setting. So obviously the occupation that came up was agriculture, so we took that more seriously. And researched it ourselves, and we thought it was quite a viable option, actually. So we thought we would try our hand at it. So it was more like hobbying to begin with, just sort of playing in the soil, so to speak.
Yeah.
And then as time progressed, we realized actually, we could do this for, an actual living. This could work. And so it kind of grew from there, really.
Wow. Okay. Amazing. And another question for you all, actually. So how important was passion in pursuing your now careers of choice? And I'll start with you, Marv, just especially because you touched on the beer starting off as a...
Yeah. You can't blag a passion for beer. That's the one thing I know for sure. And, when I was researching beer for this TV feature, I literally fell in love with beer after tasting a beer called Peach Melbear made by Beartown Brewery. I was in a pub in Nottingham, and I said, "Oh, I'll just try that because I like the look of the pump clip, like a cartoon bear or something." I was like, "I'll choose that." And when I smelt it, it had a lovely aroma, light aroma of peach on the nose. And this was, a beer that wasn't hugely bitter, because my like preconception or my kind of experiences of beer were, lagers, pretty standard, tasteless, and I was just like, this beer was not like that, and that's what blew my mind. It was less bitter. There was a little bit of fruitiness. That was it. The door was open for me then. And my journey's just been searching for different types of beers. I mean, there's 6,000 produced in this country alone, so you're never going to get to try them all. But I like the job of trying as many as possible. And now, writing a column for BBC Good Food, there's even more of an excuse to try beers. So passion, ultimately, it has to be there, I think. Otherwise, it can't drive you.
Sure. Riaz, I ask you the same question.
I think for me, it was just I don't know if passion is the right word, because yeah, Caribbean food is just part of my life and part of my family's life. Ever since I was born, I can remember it. And so it was super easy for me to kind of engage and make a book about that and go around. So I guess it was passion, but yeah, passion, it's weird because passion seems like kind of something that you stumble upon, like you mentioned with the beer. But for me, it's just something that was always part of my life. And especially in this country, it just seems so weird to me how the community had been in this country for so long, and yet the kind of wide knowledge about the food still lagged behind a lot of other communities' foods, and that really didn't really make sense to me. And especially when you consider all the people who've been putting in work for so many years, and there's like families who've owned businesses from the 1950s that are still going. And when I googled them, they'd hardly had any mention in any newspaper or any celebration of the fact that they were still going. And I felt like that was like an extension of my family's stories not really being told. And so yeah, that's what drove me. And then as I kind of progressed over the years, you notice that there's other communities in this country, non-Black communities, but also like ethnic minorities who also face those same like tribulations. And I think that's what has driven me lately, is kind of unifying a lot of those communities and understanding that we kind of have the same background and we're in the same struggle to get our kind of awareness.
Fantastic. Thanks, Riaz. How about yourselves, Robert and Michelle? You started, I mean, you touched on the fact that, you started to read an awful lot about agriculture. Are you at a point now where it's turned into a passion, or do you view it still as very much an occupation? Do you keep the two separate?
Yeah, I would say it is a passion at the moment, but because, prior and also when we started, we had no previous experience with working in the soil or anything like that. As a matter of fact, I really had an aversion to any sort of mud or anything that looked remotely sort of dirty. So it didn't appeal to me, from a from a do I want to do this point of view. But the more and more we were involved in it, and the more we could see the benefits, not just for ourselves as individuals, but also for the family as well. I think, if anything, that's where I would say passion kind of came into it at that stage, because then you really want to make it work. You can see that, as I said, the benefits for the family, being able to work together as a unit. And then as you meet certain trials, certain difficulties, you want to progress, you want to work through, you want to be able to get over these hurdles. And I guess, you can say passion is what sort of keeps you in the game, keeps you thinking positive, and you have your plans, you have your goals. But I would say on a whole, it's more, as we got involved, I think more passion developed as we were working. The more we did, the more passionate I became about what we were doing. And we're at a stage now where we're sort of thinking, how was it that we were never involved in this, prior? Because this is so much of our lives now.
Sure, that makes sense. And so with that said, Robert, how do you find, I know you touched on some parts in your recent answer, but given that this is a completely or fairly new career to you, how do you find that motivation and drive to continue to move forward? Is it from a place of family or success, or what drives you in that respect?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's family, but tied into that, what really is the bedrock is our spirituality, is our spiritual walk. So it's like, if as an individual, because we're all different, but we're all, I believe anyway, we're all on this journey together. And if you believe that you have a particular path that's been set out for you, but it's up to you to take that path and make those choices, then, that's what's going to keep you going. Do you see what I mean? And from that, I think you can get a certain level of satisfaction as well from that, because, when we're not knocking, don't get me wrong, but when we were in the corporate world, and there's nothing wrong with the corporate world, but when we were in that, we were just really sort of doing what everybody else was doing, just sort of keeping up with the Joneses, this, that, the other. And to a certain extent, you sort of feel that your satisfaction, that your identity is in doing some of the things that you see other people doing, but you really don't have any idea. But at the moment now, I can honestly say that we are really satisfied.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We really do feel that sense of purpose, that sense of belief, that sense of identity, and we'll probably, go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, fantastic. Riaz, I'll direct the same question to you, but with a slightly different angle, because I understand wholly what you've described in terms of visibility or lack of. How were you able to kind of start the journey, especially with your first book, Bellyful, given that there wasn't a great deal documented for you to go and find? How did you kind of keep that focus and drive moving forward?
Because I've been in talking to the people and just like listening to their stories and the history behind it, and the way that they would say stuff that I remember my family saying around the dinner table. Some of the people I was interviewing would say the same things that my grandma and my aunties would all talk about, and all these kind of different things about their upbringing and their older generation's upbringing all started to make more sense to me. And as a lot of this stuff isn't in books and it's not taught in schools, it was almost like going to school again, but like for something I actually cared about. So that answers the question.
Nice, it does. And this is a question for all of you. Chip in as you see fit. How do you look after yourself? What are your self-care practices? Because I know you recognise that you all work in very different fields, but have very busy lives and careers. How do you look after yourselves? Mark?
Well, yeah, I'll jump in with a quick one on that. Even though I'm a beer writer and I have like an extensive collection of beer at home, because there's like deliveries every day, brewers going, "Can you try this? And let us know what you think." My husband and I do not drink Mondays to Thursdays. It's like a new health kick thing. Yeah. So like on Friday, it's like, open the boxes, let's dive in there and see what's happening and try and, a couple of new things. So that's nice. I do like what everybody else does. I look for something, good to watch, to take my mind off things. Like just started watching 20s on BBC iPlayer, the new series by Lena Waite. Okay. I love Insecure. The last OG, Tracy Morgan's just hilarious. That's a Jordan Peele series. Star Trek Discovery, Sonequa Martin Green, black female lead. I really love to just dive into great narratives. And I read as well because I'm just looking to. I'm thinking about a PhD, so I do some academic reading and that kind of thing. So just basically just try and switch off from their day job, which is I'm a full journalism educator in higher education.
Nice. Robert and Michelle, how easy or not is it for you to detach, given that you are farmers and it's not a job that you can just take time off from as easily as some other occupations, because you are immersed and living within it? How easy or not do you find it to take that downtime?
Initially, it wasn't very easy, actually. And we were finding that we could tell what time of the day it was by where the sun was located, because we would be in the field and we'd be like, oh, we better go inside because like the sun's over there. That must mean it's quite late.
Oh, wow.
And we've got children, and we're like, oh, we need to get them to bed because time just goes when you're in the field. But then once we sort of got to the realization that, this was happening, we said, okay, we need to have a cut-off time, and we really need to be done, because we are Christian and we do try to keep quite we have worship time with our children in the evening, and we sing and we, we read scripture and things like that. And we said, look, we're gonna have worship at 6 o'clock every day, come what may. And so that's what we would do. So we down tools and we would come in, we'd have worship, get them ready for bed, get them off to bed and everything. And in the summertime, when the sun sets really late, which it sets quite late in northern parts of Scotland, Robert might go back out and tinker about outside, just, clearing up or doing stuff, or, if we're putting up the tunnel or something, we may go back out together and he might need an extra pair of hands trying to get the plastic on, or, things like that. But yeah, we are kind of, we have to look at the weather. There's so many things, like, for example, putting up the tunnel, the plastic can't go up if the wind speed is too high. So we found that, we've had to go out 5-6 o'clock in the morning to go and do it, because we've noticed when we've looked at the weather watch that, the wind speed's going to be like 3 instead of 15. So we're like, we'd have to get up and go out, So we're kind of governed a little bit by that. But generally speaking, we also have Sabbath off. We keep the traditional Sabbath of Friday sunset till Saturday sunset. So we have that time, which we don't do anything, we don't work. And so we prepare for that. We make sure that the field, can take care of itself over that period of time. And we're back out there on Sunday, Sunday being the first day of the week and the start of a working week. So that's kind of how we sort of self-care. It's about getting that balance with rest and work. But for the children, it's all play for them. If they're out in the field with us, it's not work. It's, even when it is work, it's not work, it's play. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you for that. And then moving on, I just want to talk about the influence of being Black and your heritage and how that has played a part in your decisions and career choices to date. And I say that because, myself, I'm of Jamaican parentage, and I always felt that growing up, there was definitely an expectation for me to either pursue a certain career or definitely move forward towards higher education. That's just my experience. And so I'm interested in yourself. I'll start with you, Marv, just on how you believe your heritage has played its part in the occupations that you've chose, or not.
Yeah, my mum was the same. So she's Montego Bay, Jamaican heritage, came here in the 50s, was a nurse locally in the West Midlands, and my dad was a builder. And my mum just said, whatever you want to do, just make sure you get your education, get to university when you get a degree, and you can do anything you want, right? So my middle brother, so there's me, I'm the youngest, and there's I've got another brother, Fitz, and then Tony's the eldest. Tony didn't go to uni. They both went to grammar school and stuff. Tony didn't go to uni. Fitz went to uni. So I saw Fitz go and I was like, okay, yeah, I need to do that. And I thought I wanted to be a solicitor, but then I'm not clever enough, right? So, but I always loved the media. I always listen to the radio and stuff like that. So I knew I wanted to kind of work in something to do with broadcasting, something to do with news, because my mum always bought that or had delivered the local evening newspaper, the Birmingham Mail, delivered through the door. Yeah. So when she'd finished reading it, I'd read it, and we watched TV news and stuff like that. So, education was her thing, because she wanted us to do to excel as far as we could. And then I suppose my heritage hasn't played or influenced my work in beer, although I've always been very conscious of the fact that I'm the only Black woman talking beer. Well, I was for a very long time. Now there's Jaeger Weiss, who works at Wildcard Brewery. She's a head brewer, and she's amazing. And there's Echo Brewery, who I know, just featuring them in my Christmas column. And there's a small scene here. I'd love that to grow. But yeah, the one thing I've always felt is, I know I'm the only Black woman talking about beer in this country, but it's never it's never been a problem. It's never been seen as a problem. I've always been massively accepted by the beer and pub industry. So I know a lot of breweries and pubs and the industry, like CAMRA, SEBA, BBPA, the industry bodies, all that sort of thing. And I know a lot of other beer writers, some kind of in the scene, and I've always been welcomed.
Sure. And I fire the question off to you as well, Riaz, but I think in the way that you've answered my previous questions, in that, your books and the work that you've done is very much an extension of who you are. And so I guess, without me answering the question for you, how much more of an influence do you think that your heritage has played its part in you choosing the path that you've taken?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's important to know that I didn't do that straight away. I went to uni and I did a master's and then worked in corporate world, suit and tie, for a couple of years.
Did you?
But I always knew that, like, to put it bluntly, I was like, if I go to the best uni in this country, when I decide that I want to do what I want to do, no one can tell me I can't in my family, because I already did what they asked me to do for like 15 years.
Yes.
So that's basically what I did.
So there was that expectation from you as well, from your parents.
Yeah, it's hard to say expectation, because it definitely, there's a lot of kind of cultural differences. So I say it was definitely not as strict as some of the other people in my family, and not that same like kind of hard strictness as some of like my West African friends.
Yeah.
But there was definitely that element of the same as everyone else, uni, maybe masters, and then either medicine or law or just those like kind of known jobs. And I think that's a legacy of the situation that our kind of ancestors, our parents and their parents came into when they came to this country. They didn't have those same creative options when they came here. It was all about stability, and that's kind of all they knew. So that's what they tried to impart on us. And I think it's such a shame that it's kind of like we're the first generation. We're by no means the first generation who are kind of saying what we're saying, but we're the first generation now, because of social media and the kind of lower barriers to entry, who are able to kind of pursue these creative endeavors.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame, because when you look at some of our elders, when you go to parts of Africa and when you go to the Caribbean, you see how crazily creative people are. You see people making electronics out of scrap heaps, and you see people creating art out of the same, and you just think it's such a waste that this talent pool is just not reaching its full potential.
Yeah, but I have to agree with you in that when our parents arrived, the sole thing that they were thinking about moving forward for their children is stability and being able to survive in a country that has not always been receptive, and is still in many ways still not receptive. And so education was that pathway and that ticket to help you move forward, or that was the hope anyway. So
yeah, and I think because of it's like generation as well. So if that generation have high barriers to entry and they can't get into certain industries, then they're not going to be able to pass on that knowledge chain down to their kids, and so on and so on. And so that's why another reason you don't see many Black faces in these things is we're not coming from a place where you even know it even exists, let alone anything else. And so there's nobody to tell you that there are photographers who make 100 grand a year, and there are people who freelance this and do that, and there are people who own big companies. You never see any of this when you're growing up, and it's a generational thing. And so I hope we can be the ones who pass down that info to the next generation, to say that you can do these things, and you can maybe even do them better than anybody else.
Yeah, Riaz, you're so right there about like us not having, often that the generation who's done it before. So it's exactly the same for me in journalism. I was going into journalism media. Nobody in the family was in it. I think my family thought I was a bit crazy, and I was like, I'm going to do this. And even sometimes when I look back, yeah, it's a bit crazy. So driven by that, like navigating the whole journalism and broadcasting industry without any help, I now I'm mentored for the last 10 years, aspiring journalists, broadcasters, and now I teach. So I'm head of undergraduate journalism at Birmingham City University because I want to impart what I know. And the team want to impart what they know as experienced journalists, to those coming through to kind of so they can go and excel as well. Yeah, it's really important.
It really is. The power of role models is just super, super powerful, and mentorship as well. And just to tell you briefly, in 2019, when I was initially thinking about setting up a community organization, I remember going on Google, and I remember Googling in particular Black chefs UK. And, I'd personally worked in the hospitality sector for 17 years at that point. And I'd worked with, a whole variety of different types of people or ethnicities. And it brought up, I think, 3 Black chefs. And, I don't need to tell you who they are because, we all know who they are in terms of the real prominent big names. And that really disturbed me because I knew that not to be true. And so, and that is why a huge part of what we do is around amplifying voices, because people, whether that's students or people in the infancy of their role or mid-management, having visibility of people and role models that look like them, that have been able to move forward and achieve, is super, super important. Anyway, sorry, taking over. This isn't about me.
No, sorry. It's very important.
But Robert and Michelle, so same question to you, but more so around your original career path. And do you think that your race, heritage played a part in the kind of career paths that you initially decided to pursue?
Well, I think for me, Michelle will answer in a second, but for me, I think similar to the other panelists, there wasn't any particular sort of pressure on me as a person, but I knew of the pressure. I came from a single parent background. My mum is from Trinidad, and so I knew of the struggles. She was a nurse, and I knew she always wanted us to be the best of whatever it is that we could be, but she wasn't sort of overly aggressive in terms of pushing in that way. And I didn't really have any particular ideas as to what I wanted to do or anything like that. And I think similar to what Riaz was saying, I remember coming out of school and then going into college and coming out of college. I don't remember anybody in particular sort of showing me, or there weren't any people in my sphere that were showing me any sort of particular avenues or routes that as a young person, no role models in that way. And so you just sort of do what you see, everybody else doing. So, so I ended up sort of getting involved more, on the sort of corporate side, IT, business, and that sort of thing. And I'd probably say I just sort of fell into that. It wasn't because of anything. But while I was doing that, what I would say is I had a mindset quite early on, which was I would look at my contemporaries and I would always sort of, in my head, I'd be saying to myself, well, if this guy can do what he's doing, and why can't I? That would be the question that I'm asking, what is stopping me? And I would know, the issues and, race, this, that, the other. But for me, I was more interested in, there might be external things that are sort of stopping me. Mm-hmm. But while I'm right here, there are things that I can do. And so I would always be looking positively, what is it that I can do and how far can I go, and that's what would sort of drive me. I think now I have a broader understanding of things, and obviously I appreciate what's going on in the UK and the issues that we have, but I would still say that we definitely have a job, a role in terms of being that sort of positive, maybe not role model, because but that positive voice in the room that can sort of share that, hey, You know, yeah, there are doctors, there's lawyers, but there's also other people doing other things. You know, the world's big, you know, there's so many experiences. And like Ray was saying, you know, you go to other countries and there's people that have beautiful talents that we know nothing about, you know. So yeah.
Okay, super. The next question for you guys is about life lessons, and I just want to understand if there has been a single life or career lesson that you carry with yourself daily that kind of keeps you on your path and keeps you moving forward. Riaz, can I start with you?
I think it's like kind of easy out, but I think the last like years kind of shown a massive life lesson is that doesn't matter what you plan for, there's greater powers that be that gonna throw your plans in a bin. And so it's impossible to especially like kind of my generation, it's like the social media generation where everyone sees what other people have and what other people do and then kind of compares themselves. But yeah, the last 6 months have shown that kind of those things are just a facade and everybody's in their own journey and their own pace. And so it's important not to kind of compare yourself to other people. And if you're kind of enjoying what you're doing and you're making it work, then just kind of keep going and, you know, don't throw it away just because your friend's in a job and they've got a new car, but, you know, they don't enjoy their job and, you know, those kind of small things. So just enjoy your own path, I guess.
Yeah. Agree. Marv, Lorraine, have you got anything to add to that?
I suppose it's kind of like connected to what Ria's saying, because it made me think about life satisfaction, because, you know, I'm knocking on the door of a certain decade. So I look back at my you can all guess now. I'm looking back at my life and like thinking about how I used to be in my 20s, and, you know, what Riaz was saying about looking at other people and, you know, seeing what they've got and comparing yourself and all that sort of thing. I used to do that a lot. And through, you know, the highs and the disappointments in life, one thing that I've hold on to most is that for me, I strive for satisfaction in work and life. And I say that because, you know, through the years I've had jobs where I've not liked it. I'm quite headstrong. I've not liked the job. I've walked out. Like not even handed in a resignation letter. I'm just like, God, not turned up again, right? So I've done things like that. So my tolerance for anything that you know, any work that I don't like, that I don't want to do, that I don't have to do, for things that, you know, for work that frustrates me, is low. And yeah, and that's through, because above all, I just need a quiet, satisfied, happy, fulfilling work and family life. And that for me is ultimately what's important.
Sure.
I think that's the end of my answer. I kind of stopped and went, and I was like, am I saying anything else? I don't know. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Robert, Michelle, do you have a life lesson that you carry?
It's been the greatest life lesson. Well, I don't know really. Do you? I don't really have a greatest life lesson.
Yeah, I would say just knowing what your identity is, you know, and being confident and being comfortable with that. And I think, you know, for a lot of people at the moment, especially with everything going on with COVID and then with the whole, you know, sort of upheaval with the Black Lives Matter and all this sort of stuff, I think it's just made people look a little bit more to themselves to see, okay, well, what's really going on? You know, where am I, you know, in this world, in this universe, at this particular point in time, what am I actually doing? And so I think for us, we find solace in the identity that we have. And I think, I'm not trying to say that's an answer for everybody, but I'm just saying for us, it gives us a certain level of peace and calm, where
amidst the storm.
There is a crazy storm. Just look around you, you know.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, thank you for that. We've got the final two questions, and before we move on to those, I'm just going to remind the audience watching, if you do have any questions at all, please do pop them in the comments box. The next question's my favourite, because I am obsessed with food. So what's your favourite food or drink of your heritage, and why? Riaz, favourite food, drink?
So I was gonna go like a kind of step deeper, because it did used to be rice and peas. Just like a good hearty meal of rice and peas. And then I went to Ghana and I had wachi for the first time. And if you know anything about wachi, it's kind of a dish that rice and peas is based on. And that was like when I tried that, it was like life changing. And now every time I can get my hands on it, I devour it. So if you don't know, it's like rice and beans, but then it comes with usually a piece of fish, which is usually similar to kind of how Caribbeans do fried fish. And then it will have some greens, and then shito, which is like a hot sauce, maybe some noodles, and gari. And yeah, that's my go-to now. Unfortunately, through my books and just work in general, I've eaten Caribbean food so many times that it's kind of hard to get super excited about it like I used to, even though I still love it.
Yeah.
So yeah, now my kind of go-to comfort is actually Nigerian and Ghanaian food.
Cool. How about yourselves, Robert, Michelle?
I was just trying to unmute it. Yeah, for me, I kind of like a bit of everything, but we've been vegan now since what was it, about 2001. So that kind of changed our plates, so to speak. And so it's a bit different now. But back in the day, I think on the Caribbean side of things, one of my favorite, in fact, I liked everything, but I'll tell you something that I can tell you what I didn't like. As I was growing up, my parents, they would make okra with cuckoo and liver. And I remember I'd be in tears. I'd be absolutely in tears. I became very inventive and creative as to how I could hide the food. But other than that, most things were quite delicious. But one thing I really did enjoy was fried breadfruit. But, I'm of mixed parentage. So, I have sort of both sides of the field, I suppose. I have the European side too. So, but I would say my favorite food, I shouldn't say it really on this program, but it's actually Italian. I love Italian food. Yeah, so it's right. You can shoot me afterwards. But that's mine. What about you? Oh, and then you're from Trinidad, so I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, so mine is very, very easy. If any of you guys have ever had any Trinidadian food, you really have to go over there. I mean, I'm not trying to say that there's somebody over here in the UK that doesn't do it really good, but a good roti, that, with anything inside, with the sauce, it's just going to happen.
That's
true.
true.
With Nutella.
Say again?
I used to eat it with Nutella.
Oh, mate.
Roti with Nutella?
Mate, it's amazing.
I'm not even going to say anything, Reyes.
Oh my days.
That's a new one. I'm not even going to say
right.
It
tastes amazing with anything.
Yeah.
If you get skins that are properly seasoned, you could literally just eat them on their own.
Yeah. There you go.
How about you, Marvarine? What's your favorite food?
Michelle, hearing you talk about liver, when my mom used to liver, I would just, she would make me eat it. I couldn't stand it. I could not stand it at all. But I loved it when, I love curry mutton, rice and peas, fried plantain, have to have the fried plantain. I'm shamefaced to say and admit to you all, so Riaz, I'm going to have to enlist your help here. I make a very poor very poor cooking mutton, rice and peas. I need to brush up on my skills. So I was running to mom to get my portions. Even my older brother, who's a brilliant chef, does it better than me. Yeah, so that's my favorite. That's my favorite Jamaican food.
Cool. Thank you very much. And so, guys, the final question tonight is how do you think we can play a part in supporting the next generation of Black people entering into our industries? I'll start with you, Riaz.
Yeah, I think initiatives like what you're doing are really good, and just making sure that those kind of touch the younger generations. So I've done a few things going into schools, and it's just all about making sure those younger generations can see that there's so many things that are available right now. Like, there's not the same barriers that our parents had to start up anything. Like when I started, I just had a small, tiny following on social media, and there are kids who are 10 years younger than me who've got hundreds and thousands more followers than I do. And so there's no age limits to any of these things. There's always, and that's minimum and maximum as well. That's not just the younger generation, it's older generation who are looking to change career or start a new career. There's the opportunities are all there. And it's just about kind of, making sure that we connect and show that, the pie is big enough for everyone. And if one person's doing it, doesn't mean that you can't do it as well.
It's very true. Agree. How about yourself, Marvin?
Echoing what Riaz is saying, really, and by us doing what we're doing and being visible and showing that there are, showing the many facets of us that there are, right? That's really important. Representation truly does matter, and the Black Lives Matter movement this summer has shown up how far all manner of industries really have suppressed our voices, right, in terms of people being able to see us for what we do and the many facets of us, but also oh, sorry, I sounded a bit bojo then, but also no, sounded a bit politician-like, but also I think sorry, like Riyadh said, social media now and technology has broken down any barrier to you showing others what you can do. Really has. It's revolutionized our ability to communicate, our creativity, our excellence in all kinds of different fields. So if you've got an idea, if you're doing something, if you're cooking, if you're making your own drinks, whatever, just get yourself on Instagram, tell the world. TikTok, I haven't got beyond dancing videos on TikTok, but I know there's a lot more going on there, a lot more good stuff. Get on those platforms, and you'll build your community, and you'll build your followers, and you'll be able to inform and educate further and wider than some of us have ever dreamed.
Yeah, thank you. And last but not least, Robert and Michelle, anything to add?
Well, I definitely have a passion for young people learning the art of growing. I think a lot more people, especially people of colour, need to get involved in growing. It sort of seems to be one of the last places that we see people of colour, I think, anyway. I don't know what you think, but
definitely.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Isn't that so ironic that we all come from backgrounds where people are agricultural, and now we're so
Absolutely.
separated.
And that's part of a bigger problem, really. But
I think it's similar to what you were saying, Riaz, about the sort of West African. They may have a stronger sort of message coming from their parents to be the doctor, be the lawyer, be the. But what about the grower? But I think it's because where they've come from a lot of these villages, they were growing. And they kind of, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but it's almost as if it's associated with poverty.
With hard work.
You get what I'm saying? Whereas
even hospitality industry is like that in a way as well. Families, the last thing they want is for their kids to be doing a restaurant as well, because they don't see the other side.
Yeah.
That's right. So it's a real shame. So I think, in the agricultural world, definitely more needs to be said and more needs to be done to show that actually it's a viable option. And actually, it's quite a holistic option as well. It's not just a case of growing. There's so much research out there, which is, I suppose, which drives our passion because we have children. And, we're so interested in our children maturing emotionally and spiritually and academically. And, there's so much research that says, the more time you spend out in nature, the more time you spend in the soil,
it's better for you.
That it's actually going to actually build their intelligence. There's research that actually suggests that. And so it's like there's more to it than just sticking your hands in the soil and growing a little bit. You actually you grow as a person. There's so many challenges, but yeah, it's a real blessing all round. So it definitely needs to be shared.
I was going to, sorry, I didn't want to talk over, but Michelle and Robert, you are the change. I never knew about you until this moment. And now, seeing what you're doing and hearing about what you're doing, I want to investigate more. And I just want to be saying to all my journalist friends, what do you know the Artisan Grower?
Yeah.
You need to be speaking to, you know what I mean? So, like, even connecting and doing what you're doing is going to go a massive way towards spreading the message that you're spreading here.
Yeah. And can I just say, and totally agree with everything that's been said, and the forum that we've got here as well, Lorraine. This way of being able to get the voices to be heard, but also I think just to add very quickly, I think, and I know it sounds real cliched, but I think staying positive as to what we know that can work and that can be done, instead of this is just my own opinion. Maybe some people who would rather maybe focus on more on the problems, whereas we can actually be part of the solutions, because I think a lot of us know what the problems are. We've been here for a long while, nothing's really changed. So now we need to look at solutions and to see, okay, this is where we are. How can we move forward? And I know you've got to look back, don't get me wrong, but it's just that we can spend a lot more time on solutions
and being doers,
and highlighting what people are doing versus, do you know what I mean?
And I think that's one of the blessings of the entrepreneur video that we ended up being on. We weren't sure about even whether we should be on it in the first place, but we did. And it's been such a blessing. We've had people that have reached out to us, and it's kind of touched another generation, because when you're farming, you're in a farming community, which is a lot of old folk, and and so to have a farming company being represented in a Jay-Z or Pharrell video, it kind of puts it on another level, and it brings the attention to now young people.
Super. Thank you for that. And now, so we've come to the end of the questions. So thank you ever so much for answering that. Sorry. And I'm going to just move to the comments to see if there are any questions at all for the panel. Just bear with me. Loads of comments, but I can't see any questions. Okay. First question is, what is your biggest achievement or win that you've had within your hospitality career? And it's not directed to anyone in particular, so feel free to answer whoever wishes to.
Aline 44, I'll quickly jump in with that then. When I started beer writing about 10 years ago, I think it was about 2 years after I started writing, I got awarded so the first black woman to win the gold award at the British Guild of Beer Writers for my blogging and TV work. So that was kind of whoa. So big industry dinner in front of all the top breweries, all the up and coming breweries. It's a massively prestigious award, and I was just like, what? Yeah, that's a big achievement in this space.
Okay, super. Anyone else want to chip in?
I think for me, it would just get my first book out, like self-published, because for me that was just, well, it wasn't just for me, it was to show like my friends and other people, you don't need that big machine behind you to get out something like that anymore. If you have an idea and you have some people behind it, you can get off the ground, like I said, with just couple hundred social media followers and some people who are also as invested in your interest as you are. And so that was a really good thing for me.
Super. I think we might have another couple of questions. There just seems to be a bit of a delay in them coming through. The next question is from Ziki Zach. Hi, Ziki Zach. I work in a large restaurant and was wondering what your thoughts are on why there are relatively few BAME working in more traditional restaurant businesses.
Gosh, I don't know. Again, we were talking about it earlier, weren't we? About whether or not it's a path that we think of it instantly, in terms of career. And I don't know whether those large restaurants, do they take staff from particular kind of cookery schools or anything like that? I don't know, because then if the school feeding in or the university feeding in or the hospitality school feeding in is also doesn't have many Black, Asian, minority ethnic graduates, then how are they getting into those big restaurants?
What I'd say to that, and I'm not on the panel, but I'm going to add, just because I've looked at the stats, and so within hospitality itself, from a numbers perspective, there's close to 18% of Black, Asian, and other ethnic minorities working within hospitality sector. It's where they are is the question. So where they tend to be, and I know this from experience, is back of house roles, KP type really junior roles, and within head office a similar thing. But I think it would be really important to note that within that category of BAME, there's definitely differences in where people within hospitality sit, for sure, and where there's a real lack. And I can say this, having lived and worked in this sector for a very long time, is in management or senior level decision-making roles. That's where the biggest gap is within the mainstream hospitality sector, in my view. That's just my thoughts.
And it's reflected across so many industries. It's the same across isn't it? And isn't that horrific when you think about it's the same story, just take the word out, put a different sector word in there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've repeatedly been asked the question about hospitality specific, and what I always make a point of saying is this is a societal issue. This isn't hospitality specific. It's not unique to any one sector. Unfortunately, it's a problem that prevails across a number. So I think we've got one final question, and then we'll wrap up. From Paul. So drawing on your experiences in mentorship settings, what are the biggest inspirations and aspirations you hear from the next generation of young BAME professionals coming into hospitality? Okay. So it's a long question. Does anyone want to take it?
I'm going to recuse myself from this because I've not mentored in the hospitality space. I've only mentored in journalism.
Yeah, sure. Any thoughts, Riaz?
I don't know about that because I haven't mentored either, but I just know that a big inspiration is just seeing how kind of unified and how connected to this generation coming through are. Like everybody knows each other, everyone knows what each other's doing, everyone's supporting each other. And if you're at a dinner and somebody's like, oh, I'm trying to connect with a Ghanaian chocolate company, within 1 second, somebody else already knows 2 or 3 companies to connect them with. And maybe 5 or 10 years ago, that would never have been the case. But now everybody is so connected. And I think that's a really good thing for the next generation in hospitality, is that they're connected and they share information. And so, they can use that as a positive to, prop themselves up.
Yeah, I agree. I really do think that, personally, I think social media is, it has its negatives sometimes, but in terms of creating and forming connections, it has been absolutely amazing. I mean, our journey of BAME in hospitality has been mostly grown on social media during lockdown, and that has been phenomenal. But anyway, we've now come to the end, unfortunately, guys. But I want to thank you all for taking your time to join us and discuss your career path. It's been super insightful, and we really appreciate it. I also want to thank again the event sponsors, who are A Life of a Tree, Woodford and Warner, Shwen Shwen by Maria Bradford, Jerk It Up Sauce by Dames Catering, Echo Brewery, and Sham Sham Hot Sauce. And guys, please don't forget that this is one of 2 events. So the second will be on Wednesday at 8 p.m, the same place, same time. You can register on Eventbrite, or you can simply click on the reminder button on our channel. And so thank you all for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you again on Wednesday. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks for all the
Hey.
comments. Well, lots of lovely comments.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.